Hello everyone and welcome to the last match we'll be showing from round 5 of this year's FIDE World Cup to see who will qualify for the quarterfinals of the FIDE World Cup. It's Nepomniachtchi versus Vidit Gujrathi, and their two classical games ended in a draw, which means they go into tie breaks. Their two rapid games, and those are the two 25-minute rapid games, have also ended in a draw, and now we are in the 10-minute rapid territory, and this is where the fun really starts. If they draw this, they go into 5-minute blitz games, and if they draw the 5-minute blitz games, they go into 3-minute blitz games, and then, well, you all know what happens then it's Armageddon. So let's check it out. This is the first game of the match. Nepomniachtchi has the white pieces, and he opens with pawn to c4. Knight to f6 by Vidit, knight to f3. We have pawn to e6 and g3, countering the Agincourt defense with the fianchettoing of the light square bishop, d5 and bishop to g2. So transposing into the Neo-Catalan defense, we have pawn to d4 and castles. We have knight to c6 and now pawn to d3. We have bishop to c5 and now knight b to d2. So nothing new here, all been seen before. We have castles, knight to b3 attacking the bishop, and the bishop goes back, bishop to e7. We have e3, and now captures on e3. We have bishop captures and knight to g4 going after the bishop on e3. So bishop to c5, and we have a trade of bishops. Captures, and now pawn to b6, chasing away the knight from c5. And there are some games where knight to h4 was played, also knight to b3 is a known move, but here we have knight to d2, and it is now as of move 13 that we have a completely new game. So of course the idea is that if the knight is captured on c5, then Nepo captures the knight on g4, and he keeps a better position. So here we have knight g back to e5, and now knight c to b3. We have bishop to b7, Vidit also fianchetto his light square bishop, and now pawn to d4. We have knight to g6, rook to e1, and now pawn to a5, preparing pawn to a4 to chase away the knight from b3. Knight to f3, and now pawn to a4. Chasing away the knight, we have knight to c1, and now pawn to a3. Going after the b2 pawn, b3, and now queen to d6. Developing the queen, connecting the rooks. And now what Nepo needs to do is play knight to e2. You need to keep defending your d4 pawn, but for some reason, probably Nepo thought it was possible. He played knight to d3, which gives up the d4 pawn for seemingly some counterplay, but there really isn't any. So probably Nepo thought that he didn't need to calculate this, that he was perfectly fine. And Vidit said, nope, I'm not going to trust you just because you're strong. I'm going to calculate and try and punish you. And he played knight captures on d4. And okay, knight captures on d4. We have bishop captures on g2. Knight captures on e6, so Nepo will win back his pawn. We have f captures on e6, and now king captures on g2. So it is equal material, but he did give Vidit the semi-open f file for his rook. And we have rook a to d8. Now putting pressure on the knight here. Rook to e3 defending while lifting the rook, and now knight to e7. Now going for f5 to attack the rook, and Nepo has to play queen to e2, but he played queen to g4, and now Vidit's position is completely winning, but it's not that easy to see why. I didn't really decide which positions I'm going to use for pause the video moment in this video. So we could also make this one, because I'm going to spoil it for you a little bit. Vidit missed it. So, you know, having that in mind, try to find the move that Vidit missed while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on taking down former World Chess Championship challenger Nepomniachtchi. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to c6 with check. Kind of weird that winning move would start with check, but you know, such is the way of chess. The problem now is that you don't have rook to f3, which is a crucial defensive move in all the lines. If queen to f3, then the rook is pinned, and you can just play rook captures on d3. So that's the problem. So what you would have to do after this check is just move the king, and now comes knight to f5, attacking the rook. But now it's much different. Now rook to f3 is met with rook to d4, and the white queen has nowhere to go, as the white queen is stuck here guarding the rook on f3. If queen h5, just g6, And that's pretty much it. You can play one more move, knight e5, attack the black queen, but then the queen to d6. Now both the knight and the queen are hanging, and you have to give up the knight for 2 pawns here. Okay, this looks like it gives white some sort of an attack, but after knight g7, you're just down a full piece. So that's the So that's the problem. White's completely winning. But after his queen to g4 move, Vidit did not find this queen to c6 move. He played knight to f5 first, and it seems like a much more subtle way of handling the position. You know, you always know that it's better to keep the check for later and just improve your position first, but here it just doesn't work because now rook to f3 is a valid defense, and Nepo finds it, of course. The problem is now queen to c6. Yes, you are attacking the rook, but you're not in time to capture. Now Nepo just plays knight to e5 and attacks Vidit's queen. Queen back to a8, and now king to g1, just unpinning, and everything is perfectly fine. We have rook to d4, attacking the queen, so Vidit basically finds all of the correct moves that we've seen in the winning line. He just doesn't find the move order in which to play them. Rook to f4. We have rook to d2. Now this rook is incredibly strong, and this a2 pawn is a permanent weakness. Knight back to f3, attacks the rook, and rook to b2. So Vidit, of course, keeps the rook on the second rank. Knight to g5, now going after the e6 pawn, and Vidit defends. Queen to c6. We have rook to e1. Putting pressure on the e6 pawn, so offering the a2 pawn for the e6 pawn, but Vidit just defends at rook to f6, and now queen back to d1 with some ideas of queen to d8, and of course it's very hard to probably Nepo thought that if Vidit captures an a2, then he's going to go queen to d8. The problem is h6 was played, and here Nepo gave up on it, but it's still possible. Here Nepo could play queen to d8 check, and after rook to f8, look at this. Queen captures an f8 check. King captures, knight captures an e6 check, eliminating the defender of the knight. And once the king moves, you're going to capture the knight as well. And it's objectively a draw, but, you know, it's a little time on the clock. Who knows what would happen here? You know, both players can easily blunder here. To give you an example, let's say, of course, black will capture the pawn on a2, creating a passed a pawn. Now rook f8 check. And if king h7, what do you do if rook to f7? You attack the g7 pawn. There actually is a defense here. Just rook b2. And you don't care about rook captures on g7, because if you capture king h8, there's no way to actually checkmate the black king. If you could somehow bring your rook over to d8, you're just not in time, because the knight would be hanging. And if you try rook captures on c7, just queen to e8, everything is defended, and of course the passed a pawn will now be winning. So while it's a valid idea, you can't just force your way through black's defenses. So instead, knight to e4 was played by Nepo, attacking the rook here, rook back to f8. We have pawn to g4 and knight to d6. And here we have rook captures on f8, king captures, and now, while Nepo should play knight to c3, he played knight captures on d6, and he gives Vidit the upper hand. Queen captures on d6, and now queen to f3 with check. King to e7, and now queen to c3, going after the g7 pawn. King f7, queen to f3 check, sorry, not king f8, king to f7 was played, queen to f3 check, king to e7 and queen to c3, king to f7 and queen to f3 check, but here Vidit declined the repetition. Of course, for those of you who are maybe new to chess, a threefold repetition will yield a draw. So king to g8, and now rook to d1, attacks the black queen. Queen to f8, very, very precise moving by Vidit. Now, if queen moves to a silly square, then just queen captures on f2 will result in checkmate. A quick one. So after queen e3, just rook captures on a2. And now Nepo really doesn't have all that much to play for. Of course, you could capture on e6, but after king h8, again, doesn't do all that much. So Nepo goes all in. He plays g5 with queen to f5. Another very, very precise move. Point is that after g captures on h6, queen g4 check picks up the rook on d1. So, of course, Nepo cannot play that. So rook to d8 check was played. We have king to h7, and now g captures on h5. But now just rook to a1 with check. Here Vidit forces a queen trade, king g2, and queen to g4 check. Only move is to block with the queen, queen to g3, and now finally queen captures on g3. And of course, Vidit knows that his position is completely winning, but he played so many of these moves being down more than a minute on the clock, so it's very, very instructive how he does it. H captures, king captures on h6. Now rook to a8, and of course pawn to e5. We have pawn to b4, pawn to a2, and now pawn to c5. Nepo wants to trade off as many pawns as possible, but Vidit plays it correctly. Pawn to b5. We have king to f3. You can play something like king to h3. If you ever allow one single check, let's say you play something still like this, then one check, and the next move you promote a queen, the pawn to a queen. So king to f3, you have to hide from all the checks, and now king to g5. We have rook to a7, going after the pawn, pawn to e4 with check. Again, the pawn cannot be captured because rook to e1 check will allow Vidit to promote his pawn to a queen. So Nepo has to go back, and now king to f6. So Vidit playing basically perfect moves here. G4 and now pawn to g5, taking away any and all counterplay from Nepo. Pawn to c6, but now just king to e6. We have king to h2, king to d5, rook to a6, defending the pawn, but Vidit was never interested in this pawn. He plays king to c4, and he was in this position on move 60 that Jan Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once you play a few more moves, and there really aren't any useful moves you can play, you can basically move the king back and forth, just king b3, and after something like, it doesn't really matter what, king b2 will be played, and now the rook can finally move, and you will get a queen into the game. Doesn't matter what, you play rook captures on c7, rook c1, you're going to bring the rook back, and now, of course, a queen comes into the game. Rook captures, and, well, when one side has a rook and the other one doesn't, objectively, that's when our analysis ends. So that's what happened in game 1, and game 2 is also very, very nice and very short, so I'm also going to show you that, not to spoil too quickly if Nepo was able to bounce back or not. So let's see what happened in game 2. This is our game 2, where Vidit now has the white pieces. So let's check it out. Nepo needs to bounce back with black in order to force blitz tie breaks. So here Vidit opened with pawn to d4, and what do you think what Nepo played? He played pawn to f5. He went for the Dutch defense. And this is also something that I discussed in the Nakamura video, where Pragnananda was playing Nakamura. He won in the first game, and then Nakamura just went for the Robash defense. He didn't want to play anything solid. He just wanted to win, which is very much different than when Magnus loses the game. It doesn't matter how hard you beat him. Next game, you're going to have to beat him just as hard from a solid opening in order to really beat him. But here, Nepo goes for the Dutch. We have pawn to f5 and bishop to g5, the Hopton attack. We have pawn to h6, bishop to h4, and Nepo goes pawn to g5. And what is this? Did Vidit just blunder a full piece? Well, not really, because if pawn to f4, then pawn to e3, and Vidit will just collect the pawn. If you capture the bishop, of course, it's checkmate in 1. So Vidit knows what he's doing. Knight to f6 by Nepo. We have pawn to e3, and now pawn to d6. We have knight to c3, pawn to c6, and now pawn to h4. Rook g8 by Nepo. We have captures, and now bishop to c4. Very nice rapid development by Vidit. And now there are some games where e6 was played. Also rook to g7 is a non-move, but d5 is what Nepo chooses. And it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So bishop back to d3 and queen to b6. Now puts pressure on b2, but Vidit again masterfully plays a3, invites Nepo to capture on b2, but of course he doesn't. If you do this, then knight to a4 is the oldest queen trap in the book. The queen has no more squares. So after a3, just bishop to e6, continuing development, and knight g to e2. We have knight b to d7 and pawn to b4. We have bishop to g7 and now pawn to f3, controlling the center, also keeping this knight at bay on f6. And now, of course, you cannot castle queenside. If you castle queenside, knight to a4 again traps the queen as the bishop controls the c7 square. So Nepo plays king to f7. It's a pretty weird square for the king, but if anyone can do it, it is most certainly Jan Nepomniachtchi. Knight to a4 attacks the queen, and like we've said, the only square available now is the d8 square. c3, and now pawn to b6. We have queen to c2. Now comes rook to h8, offering a rook trade, but Vidit just plays rook to f1. Remember, Vidit does not need to win this game. He already won the previous one. Now he only needs a draw to eliminate Nepo and go into the quarterfinals of the FIDE World Cup. We have pawn to a5, challenging the b4 pawn, and pawn to b5. Vidit wants to open up the position. C captures, bishop captures, and now knight to h5. Attacking the bishop here, bishop back to h2, and and bishop to f6 now, just keeping the position very solid. Rook to b1, and now rook to a7. And now Vidit goes for a central breakthrough. You could play e4, makes sense as the king is on the f-file. Vidit chooses to go pawn to c4 instead, as he doesn't like his backward c3 pawn. Knight to g7, we have c captures on d5, bishop captures, and now bishop to g3. Pawn to e6, adding more defense to the f5 pawn, and now knight e to c3. The bishop is attacked, and Nepo just brings it back with bishop to a8. Maybe a more impressive try would be pawn to f4. Looks very strong, and once the bishop moves, now you play f captures, bishop captures, and rook to c7. Maybe would pose more problems for Vidit. But okay, bishop to a8 was played. Now comes bishop to c4, putting the bishop on the same diagonal as the king. So if this knight moves, you will have to worry about moves like queen captures on f5. So Nepo strikes with pawn to f4. We have bishop to f2, and now rook to h2. So with the rook on h2, the pawn putting pressure on the bishop on this beautiful long diagonal, Nepo definitely has some dynamic counterplay here. We have bishop to g1, rook to c7, and now, of course, Nepo is hoping for bishop captures and rook captures on c4, but Vidit doesn't allow even that. He plays knight to b5, attacks the rook, and defends the bishop, and now Nepo just has to decide which way to go, you know, what hurts less. So rook to h1 was played, and of course Vidit grabs the material. Bishop captures on c7, queen captures, and bishop to f2, now offering a rook trade, but Nepo cannot afford the trade. He needs to go for some sort of an attack here. Rook to c1, and now we have queen to d6. We have bishop to g1, again attacks the rook, rook to h1, and now e captures on f4. We have g captures on f4, and again bishop f2. Vidit offers a rook trade, and again Nepo declines this. And now again bishop to g1, attacking the rook. Bishop to b5 is also very nice, but rook to h5 here, and now knight back to c3. With some ideas of knight to b5, also the knight can come to e4 to attack the queen and bishop. So knight to f5, and now we have knight to b5, attacking the black queen, so you don't have time for knight to e3 or knight to g3. Queen to e7, and now bishop back to d3. And here we have king to g7. Now, there are a couple of very nice moves here, like you could play knight to e3, but then the knight just gets eliminated, and then bishop g6 picks up a full rook. So you don't have time for that. That's why king to g7, you sidestep the light squares. But now, of course, bishop to f2, keeping an eye on both of these squares. And now, again, rook to h2. Knight to e3 or g3 for the moment just doesn't do all that much. Queen to c8, very nice move, attacking the bishop here. Rook to h8, forcing the queen back, and queen to c7. Now, with some ideas of d5 and breaking through the position, as the knight here is just very, very weak. So here we have bishop to d5, bringing the defender back. Now king to d2. He wants to open up the d-file with bishop captures on f5, d-file, and then put the rook on e1 to really harass that black queen. Rook to h2 again. I think Nepo played rook to h2 like 10 times already here. Bishop captures on f5, e captures, and rook f to e1, attacking the queen. And you don't really have a good square for the queen, so bishop to e4 is played, trying anything here not to lose the match. But now Vidit plays the absolute strongest move, and that is knight to d6. Not only threatening the threatening a whole lot. But the real problem is if you play a silly move, then knight captures on f5 check wins the game. This loses the queen either directly, or if you capture with the bishop, then rook captures on e7 check will blunder the queen. So instead, queen to e6 was played, but now again f captures on e4, rook captures on g2, and now rook to g1, not allowing Nepo to have any attacker left. We have f3, Nepo fighting, creating creative ideas as usual, but it's just not enough in this position. Rook captures, f captures on g2, and now pawn to d5, and here you are just out of squares. Bishop to g5 check, seemingly connecting with the rook nicely, but just king to e2, and he was in this position on move 50 that Jan Nepomniachtchi resigned the second game in a row. And it is Vidit who goes into the quarterfinals of the FIDE World Cup 2023, eliminating the former world champion Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now, here you resign, of course, your queen is hanging, and you don't have a good square for your queen, because the queen also needs to guard the knight on d7. So what you could play here, really nothing. If you move the queen to e5, then you lose the knight. And of course, if queen to e7 defending the knight, then you allow knight captures on f5 check. This loses the queen, and of course, very, very easily the game. So very impressive by Vidit, eliminating Jan Nepomniachtchi. Everyone thought, okay, we already have 3 Indians in the quarterfinals. No way we're gonna have 4. I mean, it's Jan Nepomniachtchi who we are talking about, who won the Canada's tournament twice in a row. No way Vidit beats him, but that is exactly what Vidit did. He defeated Jan Nepomniachtchi, and now, sorry about that. Here is who is in the quarterfinals of the. Sorry about that. This is a weird looking table. There we go. This is who is in the quarterfinals. So it will be Gukesh versus Magnus Carlsen. Vidit will be facing Nijat Abbasov, who also had an incredible tournament. Dominguez Perez will be facing Fabiano Caruana, and Pragnananda will be facing Arjun Erigaisi. So every match will be absolutely incredible. I hope I manage to cover as much as possible, and it's going to be very interesting. So what does this mean? I mean, what are the players fighting for? Of course, they are fighting for rating, they are fighting for money, but mostly they are fighting to qualify for the FIDE Candidates Tournament. As the top 3 contenders here will qualify for the FIDE Candidates Tournament, you know, it's with every win, the tension rises, and here they are everyone is very close to qualifying. We still don't know if Magnus will play, because Magnus has a direct entrance into the FIDE Candidates Tournament if he wants. I mean, he is the highest rated player, and the highest rated player of January 2024 will be considered the highest rated player to enter the Candidates Tournament. So if he declines that, then we go to the next in line, which could be Fabio, but Fabio could also qualify still through the FIDE World Cup. So anything is still possible. It's far too early to summarize for who it's possible to qualify and not. But with every round of the FIDE World Cup behind us, we are getting closer to that answer. So yeah, that's the game, or rather, those were the games. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I would like to thank Philip Hextenberg, Srinivas Kashyap, Iwan Chek, Ferris is the best wife, and Yoon Young for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on the FIDE World Cup, of course, until it finishes. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And I see there's an extra E in Philip there, so I'm gonna fix that before I actually ended the video. Sorry about that. There we go. Would be weird to finish it like this. There we go. All right. Moving the... All right, there we have it. See you soon.